Hi everybody and welcome back to Be Like Christ. In today's video, we're going to ask the question, how much do you really value people? The text we're going to use to talk about this is the first couple verses of Mark chapter 3. Let's read it together. Again, he, that's Jesus, entered into a synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand, and they, that's the Pharisees, watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with the withered hand, "Come here." And he said to them, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him. It's easy to look at this text and to say, oh, Jesus is in the synagogue, the Pharisees are there, he's healing a man, just another gospel story, not really a whole lot of application to my life. But when we look a little bit deeper, we find that there's a ton of application here. So the scene that's laid out before us is the Pharisees kind of over here standing in the corner, and in the synagogue there's this man with a withered hand. And the Pharisees are just watching him. It says the Pharisees are watching for something very specific. They're actually watching this man so that they can accuse Jesus. They figure, like Jesus usually does, he's going to come on in here and he's going to heal somebody on the Sabbath day, and then they're going to get him because he did work on the Sabbath day and you're not allowed to work on the Sabbath day. Do you see the problem with this picture? There's a lot of problems, but one of the biggest problems is that these men are just simply using this man as bait. They don't care about this man at all. Here's a man with a withered hand, and maybe he needs help doing any number of things because he's a handicapped man. Maybe he needs help getting into the synagogue, unlocking the door, sitting down, getting his papyrus out so he can take notes on the Sabbath reading. But the Pharisees don't care. They're not down here helping. They're just staring at him, watching Jesus, waiting for any moment to accuse him. They've used this man just like many people use bait to catch a lion or a wild animal, right? They put an injured animal out there. They don't care about that injured animal. He's just used because they want to catch the lion. And in this case, Jesus is the lion. And Jesus is angry at them at this point when he walks into the synagogue, and for good reason, and he calls them out. He says, "Is it wrong for me to heal a man on the Sabbath day?" And they were too cowardly to give him an answer. In Matthew chapter 12, in what may be the same circumstances, Jesus gives a picture of what the Pharisees are doing and how hypocritical it is. He says, "Which one of you Pharisees, if your sheep fell into a hole, wouldn't help that sheep out on the Sabbath day?" And that's a damning accusation that Jesus has leveled against them, because it's proof that they would never use their sheep as bait. They would never not help their sheep out of the hole. But here's a man, a human being, a soul who needs help, and they don't care a thing in the world to help him. And they don't even want somebody else helping him. But be careful before you side with Jesus that you're not on the side of the Pharisees. We have to be careful because it's not difficult to find ourselves in the situation and in the position that the Pharisees were in. You see, the Pharisees cared very much for the law. That was their pride. And all of their time and all of their thoughts were consumed with a zealous, letter-by-letter keeping of the law. And that was fine. Jesus never condemned them for keeping the law the way that God instructed them to do it. The problem is that they had become consumed with certain parts of the law to the neglect of other parts. They knew how to keep the sacrifices and keep all the feasts correctly and all the rituals that were supposed to be done by the priests. And they knew all about keeping yourself clean and abstaining from things that you shouldn't be eating. But they spent so much time doing those things that they forgot about what Jesus called the second most important command in all of the Old Testament. You should love your neighbor like yourself. You've got a major breakdown when it's revealed that you love animals more than you love human beings with souls. And that's what Jesus had just revealed about them in the synagogue. But what does this story reveal about us? If we aren't careful as Christians, sometimes we can find ourselves spending all of our time looking at other people and critiquing their actions and their keeping of the law, rather than spending any time looking inwardly and examining ourselves. Maybe God brings opportunities before us that would give us a chance to show His love to the world, but we're too busy looking at everybody else and policing their actions. Does our overwhelming zeal for keeping certain aspects of the new covenant of Christ cause us to exclude entirely certain others? You can see this sometimes when a denomination holds a very unique point of doctrine. And sometimes that's all they want to talk about. That's their hobby horse. They spend all their time teaching their people about that and teaching all the other people why they're doing it wrong because of that one doctrine. And all the while, there are souls walking around them that are being neglected. They're not being reached out to. They're not being evangelized to. No one's caring about their soul in eternity because we're too caught up on a particular point. Now, let me clarify this statement right away. Doctrine is extremely important, and we have to have it right. And God has given us a plan for the way that He wants us to do things. But when one specific hobby horse doctrine runs over the rest of the gospel to its neglect, then that point has gone too far. This text in the book of Mark is encouragement to us to look a little more inwardly and to check how much we're looking outwardly. It's very easy to look at other people and see what they're doing wrong. It's a lot harder sometimes to look at ourselves. And the question is, how much do we really value people? Don't be a person who's just sitting around waiting to pounce on another person because you see them doing something wrong. Take the opportunities that God puts directly in front of us to help those who are in need. If those Pharisees had come down out of the corners and out of the shadows and they had been assisting that man, do you think that they would have received the condemnation that Jesus gave to them? Of course not. In fact, Jesus probably would have commended them for being the servant that He was trying to be for them. In life, we're always going to be presented with these two opportunities. The one is an opportunity to appeal to your pride and to look at someone else and to judge them and to tear them down. The second one is an opportunity to appeal to Christ and to His nature and to help to bring your brother up. And it's that choice that either makes you a Pharisee or makes you like Jesus.